Let's talk about Chancery cursive, the letter A. Now, if you're like most people, you're probably starting with the letter A. We're so psychologically tuned into doing the letters in order, it's hard to do it any other way. It's a little bit unfortunate, shall I say, that the A is the first letter, because the A is one of the unusual letters of the alphabet. The same is true with any font, any calligraphy. Every time we start a new alphabet, we're gonna be starting with an unusual letter, the letter A. So let me talk about how to get started and demonstrate it for you here. First of all, I'll use a system by which I label or categorized the angle of our pen nib according to this system. Draw a square, corner to corner, middle to corner, middle to corner, and I call this angle 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Most calligraphy books will call it, you want your pen at a 30-degree angle, and I always go, and I have a protractor today. So I use this system instead. The 30-degree angle would be equivalent to about a 3.5 on this box. Okay, so I'll be referring to the 3.5 angle quite often through many of these videos. But having said that's the traditional angle, I'm going to start the letter A by shifting my pen down just a little bit, so I'm about at a 4. That's because I begin the letter A with a curve at the top. I start out straight, then come down to about 7, 8 o'clock, if this is a clock face. Do you understand? At 7, 8 o'clock? And I start with my pen at the number 4 angle because I want this line at the top to be quite discrete, that is thin. I don't want it so thick, so I angle a little bit. Now the first stroke is from here down to the baseline. It's very possible that a traditional angle on the pen will be adequate for that. And then I add a little foot at the bottom. The foot can be straight or can have a slight curve to it. Your call, whichever you like. Slight curve is fine. And then the next line rather, is not curved. It's a straight line all the way to the baseline, and then kicks up with a little hook at the end. Now this hook I want to analyze with you. It's going to show up in many of our letters where we make our pen do what I call it pops a little wheelie. We're coming down, and then I lower this part of my wrist, bringing the pen up off the paper, so that the only part of the pen that's in contact with the paper is this corner of the nib. Does that make sense? This will work with most nibs. It'll work just fine. Some you may have to wrestle with it just a little bit. So I call that making my pen stand on its hind legs or pop a little wheelie. Do you see that motion? Do you see that? That's going to come up quite a bit. And that is so that this line right here will be very thin, very nice and fine and discreet. Now, having said that, let me make sure that you understand the traditional, purist, what I would call proper approach to calligraphy is that you always hold your pen at that 30-degree angle. And that's what the books tell you. And that's mostly true. But I want you to be on the inside scoop. I want you to know that good calligraphers, they cheat that 30-degree thing a little bit and make their pen go at different angles according to the need. And I'm hoping that my system here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will help you achieve that. So the same thing is true with the cross beam on the A. If you held the pencil in the traditional manner, I think that cross beam is a little too fat, a little too thick for my taste. So I'm going to, again, bring my pen down to the number 4 angle. Got it? Let me do a capital A from beginning to end one more time without so much talking. Starting in the number 4 position, curve down to the 8 o'clock on a dial, back to the top, straight down, and a little foot curve at the bottom, straight down, pop a wheelie, kick it up, make it go up there like that, and then back to a 4 position for the crossbar. There, capital letter A. Now let me do lowercase. Much simpler, of course, than the capital. Starting here, up, down, And here, again, I make my pen stand on its hind legs. Do you see how my hand goes down? So that just this one corner of the pen is in contact with the paper, because we want this line here to be very thin. Then back up to the near the top, straight down, intersecting that hook that we made. And again, pop a wheelie, make my pen go up like this. Ideally, these two lines should be parallel to each other. It just makes for a more attractive letter. And the way I do cursive, the way I do Chancery cursive, is I like to have a little gap up there. Not everyone does that. Sometimes they connect, but I like that little gap. An A again. Pop a wheelie, up, straight down, parallel to the italics mark, of course, and then pop a wheelie again. So these two lines are parallel to each other. Got it? Now, what happens if the letter A has to be connected to the letter next to it? Quite simple. You simply take this line right here as far as it needs to go till it intersects with the next letter, which in this case I'm making a letter I. Does that make sense? So that's an easy connector. The A is very often connected to the letter next to it. Now, what if the letter A happens to be the last letter in a line of text? You've got a whole bunch of words, and the last word in that line ends in the letter A. Many times, not always, this is completely your choice, but many times a calligrapher will add a little flourish to the last letter in a line of type. And again, very simple. You finish the letter down here, and then you can add an S curve, you can add a curve this way. It's again, that's an artistic choice, but that's how you would add a flourish to the end of a final A. Now, I'm going to move to a felt tip marker, because the felt tip pen is such a great tool for practicing your calligraphy. You can take it with you anywhere. Straight down, little foot, and straight down, and a little hook. Again, make my pen pop that wheelie, so to speak, and across beams. Do you see my hand, my elbow is coming closer to my body so that I'm getting more of a number 4 angle? Do you see that? So that cross beam is thin. You might like it fine for your cross beam to be heavier, and some calligraphers do that. I like mine a little on the thin side. Lowercase a, I'll do it over here. Again, starting uphill, come down, curve, pop a little wheelie so that line is nice and thin. Then the vertical comes like this. Let me point out something here that I want you to be aware of. I want you to be aware of the shape of this inverted V, or this teepee shape in here. Do you see that? That little space in there creates a friendliness to your letter. If this gets all blacked in, your letters won't be as attractive, or what I call friendly. Now let's go to the traditional dip pen. The reason we use a dip pen or a fountain pen is because the metal tip, the metal nib, allows us to make marks that are more discreet, thinner than the felt tip pen does. The reason we pull out our hair with the nib is because this is the pen that does things like spatter and chatter and fail to write when we put it on the paper and so forth. So you get used to wrestling with it just a little bit. You're not doing something wrong if you're wrestling with your nib. And I always use a piece of scrap paper, usually a sticky note up there, to make sure that my pen is behaving itself before I start making the letter. Curve down, stop at about 7 o'clock. Then turning my hand at a slight angle, I want this shaft to be slightly light all the way to the baseline. Now, it's with the calligraphy, the dip pen, that you're going to have trouble sometimes pushing the pen uphill. Do you hear that? It's kind of like a fingers on chalkboard effect, isn't it? It doesn't like to go uphill. That's why calligraphers say, and all the instruction books will tell you, always draw the pen to you. See, it makes that line very, very nicely. The real fact of the matter is sometimes you can get away with pushing the pen a little bit. Other times you can't. You will discover very quickly when you can do it and when you can't. Then this downstroke, straight down to the baseline, kicking up, again, making my pen. Now you can see the advantage of the calligraphy pen to see how much thinner that line is right there than that one. Do you see that? That's why we like and we use the pen that's more difficult, more finicky, but it makes a more beautiful line. And again, shifting my pen around so it's at about the number 4 position now, so that I can make that cross beam nice and thin. Good enough. Now the trick with it, with the letter A, is we want it to look like it's slanting a little bit, because the italics letter is all slanting to the right. So the sum total of these two slant letters need to look, it can't go like this, like a straight up teepee. It has to be a teepee and a bit of a wind that's blown it a little bit to the right. Does that make sense? So that it looks like it's slanting. Now let me find a clean spot here, good enough right here, to do the final lowercase a. I'm going to draw this down and then do this curve, and then back up here, draw down, and kick up. Let me do that again. Draw down that little curve at the top, the big curve coming out here, kicking up right there. Do you see kicking up, doing a wheelie? And then coming down, and again, making my pen stand on its hind legs to do that thin line, ready to connect, if necessary, to the next letter. You got it? That's the letter A. We're going to have so much fun doing this alphabet. Let's keep going.